Hello, this is John Weinberger. I'm a call-in.
Yep.
Mute, we're unmuted. Oh yeah, who is that on the phone? You can go ahead and let us know now, like.
Okay, I'll look that up. There's a phone number 361-7281.
This is not right.
Okay.
7281 is John Weinberger.
Okay,
Okay.
John Weinberger.
Great, thank you.
All right, everybody, let's call this meeting to order. This is the Fast Planning Texas meeting. It is Wednesday, March 4th, and we're kicking this off at 12:02 p.m. I'm going to start out with introductions of committee members I see present today. So we have with us online and in person, Michael Bradley, Michelle Denton, Jenny Campbell, which is our new appointee from the Borough Planning Commission here. So welcome. Alexa Green, Brett Nelson, Al Beck sitting in for John Tardis, Jason Olds, Bob Pristash, Corey Richardson, Lieutenant Mike Roberts, Tim Zinza sitting in for Bill Rogers, Helen Spillman, RJ Stumpf, Jacob Toyrick, and John Weinberger. The only member absent at this time that I don't see yet is Tim Glidden with North Pole. Okay, and then for Fast Planning staff, I have myself, Jackson Fox. Libby Lunsford, Corey Giorgiano, and Deborah Todd. For the record, Tim Glidden has joined us. We have a full committee today. And then for other guests in the meeting, see we have Don Galligan and Megan Laurie. Any other folks in the meeting here today I didn't announce? Okay, that's good with us. So let's move on to approval of the March 4th, 2026 meeting agenda. Can I get a motion on the agenda?
So move.
Thank you, Bob. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Kate. Okay, any changes to today's agenda? Hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the agenda as presented? Okay, consider approved. That takes us to approval of the February 4th, 2026 meeting minutes, which begin on page 2 in the packet. We'll get a motion on the minutes. To approve. Thank you, Cal.
I'd just like to comment that I listed as absent, but that's not the case.
We will correct that for the record. Thank you, John. Okay, is there a second? Motion to approve. All right, Jenny's got the second. All right, any edits to the minutes beyond what John Weinberger just pointed out to us? Hey, hearing none, anyone opposed to approval of the meeting minutes as presented in the packet and edited to clarify that John Weinberger was present at our last meeting? Okay, hearing no objections, we'll consider those minutes approved as amended. And let's move on to staff working group and chair report. This is on page 12 in your packet. I'm going to go over the action items from our policy board meeting on February 25th, and then I'm going to turn it over for some brief updates from Olivia and Corey. So running down each one of these action items from the meeting on the 25th, first and foremost, the policy board did approve amendment number 2 to our transportation improvement program for our short range funding plan. Without any further changes, that was transmitted to DOT for incorporation into the STIP on February 26th. We have also posted that on our website. Even though it's pending approval, it is available on our webpage for anyone to download and take a look at. The next motion there in relation to electric vehicle charging station nominations, just to refresh everybody's memory, the technical committee recommended that the policy board move forward with all the public property site locations for EV charging stations as the initial phase 1. However, at the policy board meeting, there were a few policy board members that had interest in trying to select one or more of the private property locations. If we could get through the right-of-way process, or at least to kind of test that out, because it was of the belief that some of the private property locations might be better than some of the public property locations. What is missing from a few of those applications, in particular Three Bears out in North Seoul, Pikes Landing, et cetera, is that with those applications, they were submitted by vendors that would operate and maintain those charging stations, but there was not an accompanying letter from the landowner as part of that application, and we would need that letter from the landowner to initiate the project and try to get through the right-of-way process. So staff are reaching back out to those applicants to try to get those landowner letters, and we'll have this back on the policy board agenda later this month on March 18th to share with them what we have and for them to make their final selection of the sites for phase 1. Next, in relation to the Chena Riverwalk project, similar to the presentation you all got last month and the discussion that followed in relation to the design of the project, the maintenance commitment for the project, and the federal funding needed for the project and who might pay the match. We went over all 3 of those items at the policy board on the 25th and had a pretty robust discussion about that project. They have referred it back to the Walk, Ride, and Roll Advisory Committee for recommendations on each of those 3 items. Olivia is working to try to set up a work session with that committee next week. So that we can get some formal recommendations out of the committee to give back to the policy board on March 18th. I don't know that the policy board will be ready to make any decisions on March 18th, but at least they'll have those initial recommendations. I do think that during our April meetings or April meeting of the technical committee, we'll put that also on your agenda as an action item for recommendations moving forward on that project. And in the meantime, I believe Mayor Hopkins and Mayor O'Neill are going to be having some discussions, in particular surrounding the maintenance commitment on that Riverwalk project between now and then. Okay, and then lastly, at our technical committee meeting last month, we discussed the request from Mayor O'Neill for some safety improvements at Trainer Gate Road and F Street intersection. An idea was discussed at our last meeting about some speed tables and potentially a pedestrian activated crosswalk light at that location. I don't think that this committee took any formal action on it. Don't recall. Regardless, the policy board did take formal action, and the city did nominate that project to the Fast Improvement Program, and they added it to the 2026 Fast Improvement Program to try to get it out to bid with our very next bid package on this program. And I've been coordinating with on the DOT side to advance that. Also with TIP amendment number 2, I did add that to the scope of the program for 26, and I also added in $100,000, not knowing what the real cost may be, but I put in a placeholder for that. So it is not only approved in the program, but it is also funded in our funding plan. Okay, that is my update. So are there any questions on those 4 items before I turn it over to Olivia and Corey for their updates? Yes, Al.
2 items, the third motion, the Cheney River Walk. I don't know if it affects or doesn't affect anything, but the design manager for that project is going to be on leave during next week, so they're not going to be present.
Okay. Thank you for that note. I was not aware of that.
And then the last one, the Trainer Gate and F Street, the latest update, we're aggressively trying to get that incorporated into the environmental document. We have a good plan to do that. There may or may not be a hiccup. I'll just be really honest on it. The speed tables are pretty easy to accomplish to put them in the document. The soffit system, which has to meet by America, there is some contaminated soils. So depending if we go down deep enough, we might hit some contaminated soils. I'm not saying we can't do it, just saying there's some challenges. And then because we're looking at one item, there's a potential sole source waiver that would need to go in there. It might be really hard to use federal dollars to get that installed this calendar year. We are looking at different solutions to expedite that. So I'm not saying we can't. It's not as easy as just installing speed tables. And we should be able to meet that no problem with the project this year. Soffit, trying to figure out how we can do it and make that happen.
Wonderful. Appreciate the heads up on all that. We'll sort through it. Kellen?
Just in relation to the EV charging stations, the discussion we had at this committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, DOT folks, that if we were going to include private property, there were a lot of challenges with that, and it was going to possibly delay the project 1 or more years. Is that still the case?
So what I heard from Lauren Little at our policy board meeting is that they are wrapping up their guidance from Federal Highways on that subject. And she would have something to report back to the policy board at the next meeting on March 18th. So, and that will help inform their decision whether to include them or not. I mean, I think what we're doing here is we're trying to add at least one private property location. And if we start down the design process and we can't get right away certified for it, then it just drops out of the bundle. But we want to try it. So I think that's where we're headed with this. So, but my hope is that any private property location, if it's going to delay the bundle, that it's separated.
Okay, I understand.
Yes, Al.
And there's always an option to bid packages based on those timeframes too. Like if we're fast and successful on the public locations or the public lands, And if we all decide to put out a bid package, and get that built. And if we had a standalone private property project, which would put that into a separate bid package when that time comes. So.
Okay.
So it doesn't necessarily exclude it, it would just be like not on the same time frame, and potentially adding cost to the project. Because having a small project still costs about the same amount to start construction.
Okay,
So I understand.
All right, any other questions for me on these 4 items? Okay, Olivia, have a couple updates with the group?
Sure, yeah, I'm proud to report that I was accepted in the League of American Bicyclists Active Mobility Leadership Lab. This is actually the first time that they're doing this lab, and they're collaborating with the CDC as well as Active People and Healthy Nation. This is gonna build kind of on another training that I was accepted into last year, the Alaska Walkability Action Institute. So all of these agencies come together. And this is a 16-week training program, whereas that other one, we basically got together for 3 days and learned a whole bunch of information, and then they said deploy it. So I'm really excited to be a part of a small cohort. They said that they had quite a few applications, but ours stood out just in terms of the challenges and the small wins that we've had in the community so far in terms of active mobility. So yeah, I'm really excited. I start that on Friday, and it's a really great kind of build on what I did learn with the Walkability Institute. As that's going directly into some quick build solutions at Trainer Gate and F Street. Sue Sprinkle with the City Council, and then Randy Bailey, who is the planner that works with fast planning over at DOT. We're all on a team together, and we're still looking to add back a public health official. We did have a public health nurse on our team, but she had to step aside. It's not a requirement for us to get the funding that we need, but we did procure a $10,000 grant, 5 of it. We have 5 of it we get in the new fiscal year to do quick build solutions, and we chose Trainer Gate and F Street to start that off. So we're we're buying radar guns for the kids. We're gonna do a citizen scientist kind of experiment, let them champion the data, and we're planning to present that back to the policy board. So have the kids involved in some decision making and the way that these treatments are being applied to this intersection. And then we're also talking about doing an asphalt art installation. We're working within the confines of the academic calendar at this point. So hopefully we'll have some art selected, and then we'll be able to build in or paint in the summer and have some students who might be in town and available to help us paint that roadway. And then I'm also really happy to report that we have started procuring our materials and preparing our own data bike. We do not have a Yuba Spicy Curry bike that we're going to be using, so no worries about the $6,000 price tag there. Our Walk, Ride, and Roll Advisory Committee members expressed interest in riding their own bicycles around. And basically the purpose of this is to do a condition assessment for both our sidewalks and our shared use paths in our metropolitan planning area. So we have the GoPro ordered, we have the 360 camera available, we've got our work iPhones and our data packs. And basically the most expensive thing out of this whole setup is some software that we were able to put aside some money for in the last budget cycle. So it'll read the all sorts of different things, but mostly the vibrations on these sidewalks and shared use paths. And then we'll be able to translate that back into mapping data. And it's just a really fun way to involve our Walk, Ride, and Roll committee members, and hopefully other members of the public who decide that they want to just ride their bikes around town to gather data for the NPO. So these are both really exciting things in terms of movement in our community outside of the vehicle. And I'm really excited to share.
Thank you, Olivia.
Yeah.
Corey?
Olivia, can you pull up design for the justcity.org?
browser.
So for the past month, I've been working by invitation with Mayor O'Neill's office at the City of Fairbanks on a fellowship that she was accepted to. It's the Just City Lab at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. And it's in conjunction with the Mayor's Institute on City Design. So this is an annual program. A lot of it is virtual, but there are 2 in-person sessions. The kickoff was in person, and that was about 3 weeks ago, which Mayor O'Neill attended. And then there will be a final in-person event also mid-April. the purpose of this organization is to connect mayors to kind of thought leaders in planning, design, social and cultural issues, and team them up with resources to accomplish specific projects in their communities. So Mayor O'Neill is interested in our kind of downtown core area and trying to make it more representative of our community and more accommodating. Golden Heart Plaza is kind of a centered element in what she's focusing on for her particular project. But I'm there to help support kind of with a design background myself, but also from a kind of standpoint of public space, mobility, infrastructure, and the like. So we've got another few weeks of this course and it wraps up in April, and I'd be happy to report out on what that results in.
You've got a question from Corey Richardson.
Yeah, Corey, go ahead.
Well, and on the Zoom, I'm only seeing the policy board action item document. I was curious if you
Oh,
guys
so
were
sorry.
looking at something else there in person.
Yeah, that's my bad. I thought I had shared the screen, but apparently I just shared the PDF. But I can send you these links so you can just kind of cruise.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to follow along and see what you guys were seeing.
Yeah, thanks for flagging that.
Okay, any other questions for Corey or Olivia?
Congratulations, huh?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm excited.
Okay, well then we'll move on to our general public comment period. Is there any member of the public that wishes to provide testimony today to the technical committee for anything that's not listed as an action item on the agenda? You can unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and proceed with your testimony. Okay, I don't see any public comment at this time, so I'll go ahead and close that initial public comment period. There is no old business today. We do have three items underneath new business. So we're gonna start out with agenda item 8A, the Fast Planning Community Transportation Grant Program. This is an action item here today. Bring Corey back up to the table here. So at our last technical committee meeting, Corey ran through some of the draft application materials for this program. We also presented that to the policy board, got a little bit of feedback from them. We did make some corresponding edits that we heard from policy board members. But today, I guess what I was hoping to do is to have Corey kind of run through the application materials again with you all, and then treat this as kind of a mini work session. So any edits that you have to these documents, say them out loud, and we'll try to live edit it if possible. And then after we've done a little bit of a work session, we'll open it up for public comment and then entertain a motion or a recommendation to the policy board on moving this forward. And the last thing I'll say is that, just as a reminder, we do have $20,000 set aside in our office budget. So this is 501c3 money, not federal money, that we would hand out to local nonprofits for transportation related grants, maximum $5,000 per grant. Hopefully we'll get some smaller ones in the mix. But it's kind of being modeled after the Golden Valley Good Sense grant program. So small grants to local nonprofits to kind of hand out some money to do some transportation related activities in our area. So I'll turn it over to you, Corey.
Great, yeah, thanks, Jackson. So
on page 13 in the packet.
included in the packet is all of the materials that we anticipate the public will have access to as part of this grant program. So it includes a program description so that folks know kind of the arc of this program and when they would receive money, applications opening, when they would expect to roll out whatever their project or program happens to be. The next page, you can see the letter to applicants. I've worked with Olivia on developing an outline for how this would show up on our webpage. So this would be one of the first materials folks could download so that they, again, know what this program is, who it's intended to, so they don't fill something out and then realize that they don't qualify for one reason or another. So letter to applicants, that gives kind of a written letter so that it's intended to be more accessible language, but also show folks that this is, community money intended for like low to the ground, useful projects. It's not intended to be a big laborious process. If you go to page 16, this is the print version of what is also an online application. So folks can fill this out via the webpage that we'll be tilting up. Or they can download a copy and fill it out and either mail it back to us or drop it by the office here. We've also, as part of our webpage, are offering up, helping folks fill these out. So if someone wants to come in and walk through, we can help them, complete these application materials as well. Page 19, go to that. Overview. This is an MOU, so this will be between FAST and the grant recipient. So it basically shows, what we would expect of a recipient, but also what we can help them accomplish. So it lists responsibilities there, as well as reporting and check-ins. Again, this is intended to be a really light lift program. So we want to give people flexibility in how they apply it and the pace at which they do it. And then finally, page 21 through to 23, that's the scoring rubric. So again, that's one of the materials that they would download as part of the application packet so that they're fully aware of, how their project will be received by the scoring committee, which is comprised of members from the project enhancement committee. So all of these taken together represent, what we think is a good first stab at a gratification grant program. And our intent is, hopefully on the success of this project, that it would evolve in future years and we'll refine these materials or change them as necessary.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, this is our first year doing this, so it's a pilot year and we're going to learn a lot through this process and be able to adjust these materials for a second round next year. So yeah, we didn't want to set the bar too high here, but
Yep. Yeah, we don't want it to be too heavy on us or too heavy on the applicants. We want this,
Yep.
we want a PTA member to come say, we want reflective vests for our students, and this is what they would fill out, and we'd help them get there. It's not intended to be intimidating. I want this to be easy money to hand out.
so those are all the documents. Again, I'd like to, if you're all interested, workshop this a little bit if you have any edits to share. If you don't have any edits to share, then I'll just advance this to public comment and a motion, but see, Al,
I just have one.
okay,
On PDF page 14, first paragraph. The bold tenants, registered non-profit organizations, educational institutions, and other. How's other being defined? Because when you look at the grant application, there's no spot for other.
So we had a question come up at policy board, if a private organization could apply for a grant and if they're partnering with a nonprofit. So if the primary is, say, Big Rays or something, and they're partnering with like a local, like downtown school or something like that, then they could apply as the primary applicant and say that they're working with the PTAs at these 3 different schools, and then they could do procurement and, give the materials to the schools. So other is intended to be our sort of open door for, you don't have to be a nonprofit, but you do have to be, nonprofits have to be beneficiaries in this program.
Is it worthwhile to share that as an example? Because the application kind of shuts you down quickly. If you thought you would do that and you get the application.
Yeah,
It might lead the applicant to not put something
yeah,
there.
sure, I think we need to, add that detail to page 14 of the packet, that first paragraph.
yeah, perfect. We can define that a bit better and kind of list it out. And so to follow up on that, if you go to page 16, Olivia, the general section of the grant application, I mean, from, your kind of first read, does this seem like, still nonprofits could come, we're prompting for organization name, are you a registered nonprofit? If no, are you partnering? And it's listed. So, but yeah, I mean, as you said, it's not front and center in the letter, so people may never get to the application portion if they feel like they're getting excluded off the
If you
bat.
feel good about it, I was just pointing it out. It's just, was my first question.
Yeah.
So I think we'll definitely make that edit, so that's clear at the very beginning. Any other edits? Yep,
I've had some questions. I think it's a good program, and this my read from it is I think it's intended this way. It's super broad. Like,
Yes.
about anything can qualify, right? As long as a nonprofit's involved, like just some thoughts, like business could partner with a nonprofit and buy like snow shovels and ice removal equipment.
Yep.
Or like recreational trails seem to even qualify, right? Okay. The one question I had is I'm looking through the scoring criteria. And there's 20,000 set aside for this. I hope we receive $20,000 in applications. Let's just say we don't. Is there a mechanism for the scoring committee to say, like, technically that project's eligible, but we don't think it's maybe the best project and choose not to fund it?
Yep. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to, I guess, clarify how this process would work is that our vision is that the applications get reviewed and prioritized by our project enhancement committee. So, and then we will cycle that to the policy board for final approval. And I know at the policy board level, those priorities are likely going to change. So, yeah, and if we don't award all the money, it just stays in our bank account and, you know, we'll put forward new budget requests for 27. But we don't have to spend it all. But also, I could also see that, like, well, we have 25,000 really good projects here. The policy board can adjust our budget to 25,000, even though we only advertised it for 20. So on the financial side, I'm not concerned. It's a pretty small amount from our account to distribute. So policy board could just do a budget amendment and say, yeah, well, let's make the program 25 and award all of them. So we're trying to keep it open-ended, see what happens here, see how much interest we get.
Okay.
Any other questions or edits? I have a couple for you, Corey, but yeah, not. We don't need to go over them here today.
Yep.
Just minor stuff.
Sure.
It doesn't change any of the content.
Formatting.
Tim,
Just a comment, I like the letter to the applicant. Making it more, just human to human contact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're intending on doing a website too, so that, you know, people can get links to that and we'll share it on social media, but you know, in North Pole, if you have any recommendations for like how to engage community organizations there or anything besides just the web presence, you know, probably think about doing flyers and other things, but you know, I'm open to any of the organizations at the table if you have ways of disseminating this information. So I know that our website doesn't always get everybody.
okay. Let's open this up for public comment. Before I entertain a motion, we can make further changes after there's a motion on the table if anybody sees the need. So is there any public comment on this agenda item today, the Fast Planning Community Transportation Grant Program? None in person. I don't see anybody raising their hand or unmute yourselves online. So we'll go ahead and close the public comment period and I'll now entertain a motion for a recommendation to the policy board.
You don't
Okay,
decide.
motion made by Jenny. So we're recommending to the policy board to adopt these application materials and advertise the program. Is there a second to that motion? Second. Thank you, Bob. Okay. Further discussion, edits? Yes, Bob.
So the stuff we talked about today, we're gonna make those edits before we send it to the policy book.
Yes. Yep,
This time.
we'll make the edits probably by tomorrow.
Will you send us one final draft copy?
Yeah, so the edited version will be in the policy board packet that goes out next Friday. And so, and you are all copied on that policy board packet, so you'll see it in your inbox next Friday. Yes, Jenny.
I just want to say, I think this is great. When I started looking through the agenda last night, I was very excited. So thank you for setting aside funds for this. I'm especially happy that it's, you know, looking to disenfranchise areas of our community. And so part of what I wonder is that reach out part, you know, so I'll be thinking about how to send the word out when the time comes. But at the last assembly meeting last week, one person came and testified about a park that's being put in, you know, in the South Fishman area. And I talked to her afterwards and she was excited that the borough's putting in money into their a park a year project. And so we talked about how that really builds community and everything. And so I think this will just add to that. And I just want to say thank you.
Okay, not sensing controversy on this one, so is there anyone opposed to the motion? Recommend the policy board to adopt these application materials and advertise the program. Okay, seeing none opposed, we'll consider that motion approved. And move on to item 8B, Bridges and Safety Infrastructure for Community Success Basics Act, letter of support to our Alaska congressional delegation. Olivia, in the meeting folder, I have a Basics Act slides PDF at the bottom. There's lots of words, right? Letter and a lot of supporting materials, but what I really want to do first before we dive into the letter is just kind of give you an overview of what this Basics Act is. So for background here, last fall, the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, put out a request for information for metropolitan planning organizations, local governments, state DOTs nationwide. Hey, what do you want to see in the next transportation bill? Because our current federal transportation bill expires this year on September 30th. Congress has either got to pass a continuing resolution to extend funding for another year underneath our current transportation bill, or replace it. And so metropolitan planning organizations across the entire country sent letters back to USDOT. We're of course one that sent a letter and it's included in the packet here. But all of those letters were also shared with the National Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, which we call AMPO. There's also a lot of letters from local governments through the National Association of City Transportation Officials, et cetera. And so these organizations that serve local governments and metropolitan planning organizations nationwide, they formed a coalition and they took in all of these comments and they drafted language for a new transportation bill, and they were able to get bipartisan support in the House of Representatives from one Democrat and one Republican working together to advance a draft of a new transportation bill. And what I was really happy to see when this was released in this draft form is that many, not all of our comments, but many of our comments, things that we were pushing for from our level actually made it into this bill. And it's not to say that it's because we submitted comments, it's because it represents the feelings or the wishes or the wants of a lot of other metropolitan planning organizations throughout the US. So what it does here on this slide, really, this is the highlight of the bill. The bill's not very long. It's, I think, 21 pages, something like that. I didn't put it in the packet just to kind of keep the page length short, but this is the overview here. So for metropolitan planning funds, it actually doubles the amount of planning funds that would be made available to metropolitan planning organizations. So at Fast Planning, for example, we receive $600,000 a year in planning funds, which is not even enough money to operate our office. We have to supplement every year with another $150,000 of project money to keep our office whole, our budget whole. This would increase that amount for operation of our office up to 1.2 million. So it would double that amount. So we would not only have enough planning funds to operate our office, but every 4 years, we've got to update our long-range transportation plan. That costs $500,000 in a consultant contract. So we can actually use planning funds to do a planning effort. Whereas right now, we're spending $500,000 on a contract using project money. So that's $500,000 less that will, literally hit the street in town. It also, this new bill also eliminates the match requirement. So we wouldn't have to collect local match or use state legislative appropriations to cover the match for operation of our office. So this would be 100% federal share to us. Also, like for this $500,000 contract we have right now to update our long range transportation line, we wouldn't have to pay match on that. We could put that out on the street without any local match, the contribution to that effort. Now, the next three categories here related to other fund categories are surface transportation program, which is the bulk of the funding that our organization receives, the highway safety improvement program, and the bridge program. This bill is actually diverting a bunch of the funding that is currently in discretionary grants through USDOT down to formula programs. So it increases the amount of STP, it increases the amount of highway safety improvement program dollars, increases the amount of bridge dollars that are made available to the state of Alaska and every state across the board there. But they also have some provisions in that, and I'll show all these numbers to you in here in a second, but they also have provisions in the highway safety improvement program and the bridge formula program that 25% of that funding for those two programs is sub-allocated by population. And so part of that money that would come to the 50 to 200,000 population category highway safety improvement program funding will come directly to the MPO to decide what projects to fund with that. And they can be locally sponsored projects. So if the city had a safety project, they could apply for highway safety improvement program funds rather than DOT controlling all the decisions made where that funding would go. Same goes to the bridge formula funds. 25% will be sub-allocated by population. So there would be a share of funding under the bridge formula program that us as an MPO could decide which bridges that bridge formula program would go to. And they have expanded the definition of an off-system bridge to basically be any bridge that's not on the federal aid highway system. So all of your local bridges would qualify underneath that. The current definition is a little bit more restrictive than that. And that was one of our requests too in our letter last fall to USDOT to modify the definition of what an off-system bridge is so that all of our local bridges could qualify for this funding. On the right-hand side there, it strengthens the language on the Metropolitan Planning Organization to select the projects within our boundaries. Also for areas that are outside of Metropolitan Planning Organization, so rural areas of 50,000 people or less, it requires state DOTs to consult with the local governments in those areas as to which projects are selected. Now, it's not, they're not empowered to select those projects, but they are required to consult with them. So it makes the language a lot more clear in the regulation on how state DOTs are supposed to interact with governments. It would also give us as a Metropolitan Planning Access Organization direct access to the federal financial management system. So anytime I need to know obligations and offset or what's going on with our projects and where the money's going or what funding categories are using, I've got to request that right now through DOT. But this bill would allow access to all metropolitan planning organizations across the US to that system so that we can see all the money live as well. And then sub-allocated funds. So funds that are sub-allocated to say, because a lot of our funds are sub-allocated to us, they're protected from transfer. And for the highway safety improvement program in particular, again, there's a 25% sub-allocation, but the other 75% of funds that remain in the highway safety improvement program cannot be transferred until after the state has run a competitive program to allow local governments throughout the state to apply for those funds. So that's new. And then for regional transportation planning organizations in which we're a pilot RPO, it provides dedicated funding for their planning work. So each RTPO across the country would get $300,000 per year to do their planning work. So it would resolve that issue of legally you're allowed to establish these organizations and here's what they do. It actually ties money to those activities so that you can get up to $300,000 to complete that work. And that was another one. This is another one here where Fast Planning had requested that because we were in that situation where we're a pilot RPO, but we don't have any money to actually do the work of an RPO. So this would resolve that at the federal level. Okay, next page, Olivia. Kind of where a lot of this comes from is that when you look at the statistics of the transportation network throughout the US, local governments own 75% of all of the road miles, the transportation system across the US. Local governments also own just over half of the public bridges on the transportation network across the US. However, local governments are only receiving 16% of the federal transportation funding that's handed out to states all across the US. And so this new bipartisan transportation bill is trying to rectify the balance of how those funds are distributed to make them much more accessible to local governments. So this is good for the city of Fairbanks. This is good for the city of North Pole. This is good for the Fairbanks North Star Borough. That not only would we receive some more funding, we would have more control of that funding, and there'll be better coordination and engagement between our local governments and our state DOTs on expenditure of these funds. Okay, next slide, which is the last one I'll go over. So looking into the funding amounts in this transportation bill, which is that middle column there for 2027 compared to current year. So it's a very slight increase on National Highway Performance Program dollars, which is invested on the National Highway System. But it's a pretty decent increase on Surface Transportation Program dollars and Highway Safety Improvement Program dollars. Again, one of the reasons you're seeing an increase here in these categories is because they're moving some discretionary grant funding down into formula programs. And that's also represented at the bottom there where you see the Bridge Formula Program. That makes the Bridge program a formula-based program that's distributed by population categories so that local governments actually have access to that. Some of these other funding categories are just kind of held to the same level, including the rail crossing program, the congestion mitigation air quality program, freight program. Carbon reduction program is still in this bill. I had thought that program might actually be removed from the next transportation bill. And as this moves through Congress, it might be removed later, but right now it's still in there. As well as the new Protect program is in there, which is for resiliency projects. But again, funding amounts kind of held to the same. But you can see on the planning side there, the PL, the box is highlighted in the middle. You can see the sharp increase in the amount of planning funds that would be made available in this bill. Currently, planning funds are about 1% of the total bill. It would raise that bar up to 2.5% of the total bill. So this is where our metropolitan planning funds would double. And this is the category as well where RTPOs would be able to receive $300,000 per RTPO per year. So it significantly increases the funding available for everyone to do their required planning work to create our long-range transportation plans and our short-term funding plans. So overall, it is a little bit of an increase from the last transportation bill to this one. When you consider inflation from the last bill to this bill, I don't know that it's actually an increase. It shows more money, but we're probably still going to be able to do the same amount of projects. But it really does help on the planning side of things. And again, it helps with establishing a little bit more local control over some of these federal funding dollars. Okay. We can go back to the packet, Olivia. So in the packet, beginning on page 24, I put together a short 1.5 page letter of support to our congressional delegation for the SpaceX Act. This act would first go through the House and then go to the Senate. It's also possible that the Senate may prepare a competing transportation bill, like what happened last time, and then the House bill goes away and the Senate bill moves forward, or vice versa. I also don't necessarily have a timeline on when this bill might actually hit Congress. Of course, the current transportation bill expires the end of September of this year, but based on past history, it's likely going to be a continuing resolution, and this might actually not be taken up fully until 2027. That's typically what's happened in cycles in the past with Congress. But my letter really just highlights the connection between the comments we made to US DOT last fall from the request for information and what we see in the bill. And then my plan as well was to attach our original comment letter, which begins on page 26 through 29, so that if the congressional delegation wants to get a refresher on what we had asked for previously, they would have that at their fingertips. I will say that the letter that I prepared is not as strong as I would like it. So I would appreciate any feedback here today on anything you think I should add or detail to your bullets, highlight other things that maybe we didn't ask for, but this is great. But I do want to point out one thing though. If you go to page 35, not everybody's in favor of this bill. So the one organization that is not in favor of this bill this time is AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. Again, the organizations I listed earlier that are part of this lot coalition, they're organizations that serve local governments, cities, counties, etc. And of course, this very much benefits local governments and metropolitan planning organizations. AASHTO is an organization that primarily represents state DOTs. So, and they feel that that this is a significant shift in disbursement of federal funds away from state DOTs and down to local governments. So, and they want to maintain what their control over those federal dollars. And despite the fact that local governments own over 75% of the road miles and over half the bridges, they use their own statistics to say, but we have 70% of the vehicle miles traveled on the transportation network, and 90% of the bridge traffic. So they're using cars, whereas the local governments are using hard infrastructure. So you can see this a few different ways. I'm just presenting this to you all because, you know, in fairness, there are two different sides to this story here. And so their comments are on pages 35 through 37 of the document. Beginning on page 38, though, the Lot Coalition, which represents local governments, pushed out a very strong rebuttal to AASHTO after they published their comments and explained to them that they're interpreting legislation incorrectly, and that in fact there's more money in this bill that's available to local governments because of this US DOT discretionary grant being converted into more formula funds. So actually state DOTs are not losing any money, but local governments are gaining money. So they wanted to clarify that, and they have a very long rebuttal on their comments. And so again, this is just a lot of information, and I don't necessarily need to go through everything here, but just be aware that that's out there, and likely state DOTs and AASHTO are also going to be sending letters to their respective congressional delegations to say, no, we don't like this. And we might be sending a letter to say, yes, we do like this, but we are a metropolitan planning organization. We do serve all the local governments. So I'm still very much in support of this bill because it helps us all here at the table, except maybe Alan Brett over there. I make their job a little harder. I don't know. So, Olivia, if you go back to page 24. We're going to handle this one a little bit differently. I would like to just entertain questions now. We'll do public comment, entertain a motion, and then any changes to the letter, I'd like to see amendments, make motion for those, so that I have specific direction of what you want me to add or remove. So questions at this time? Yes, Bob.
Could you go back to the slide that showed the changes in the funding for different use that one right there.
Yep.
So AASHTO was saying they're against it, but they're getting more money.
Yeah,
Is
there's
that correct?
Yeah, there, let me get to it here. So currently, the split in federal money between state DOTs and local governments is an 85-15 split. So 85% to state DOTs will control, 15% to MPOs and local governments. This is changing the formula to a 75-25 split, but their 75% is still the same amount as they're getting underneath this 85%. So there's more money being added into these federal formula programs,
More money total.
but the money's going to the local governments.
I see. So the total is increasing for the amount of money available. The funding is increasing.
Yes,
Just wanted to be clear on.
but you can look at this, you know, in different ways. Well,
That's one way of looking at it. The funding level is increasing and they're getting more money and local governments are getting some money.
Yep.
Because we do have a bridge.
Yeah.
O'Connor Bridge.
So is North Pole, Dochi, yep. You got O'Connor.
Thanks.
And you can spend this money on mini if you want to, like it'll be direct control over from the MPO, all sport. If you want to spend your money on a state bridge. That count?
You said a couple of things. I just think I need a little more clarification on. Did I understand correctly? So you said some of the funds now, not our STP funds, some of the other program funds are gonna come direct from the bill to the MPO.
Yes.
Were those the HSIP and the bridge
The bridge.
funds?
Yep.
Okay. So that was 25% of the set aside of those?
Yep.
Okay. I keep going with questions.
Yeah, no, please do.
Did I see your PL funds are increasing by $1 billion?
Yes. So that shows it's basically tripling there, but as far as metropolitan planning funds for us, it just doubles. That extra money is for our TPOs.
Okay. I understand. A couple other questions. I don't know if it's available at this level yet. I'm not gonna read through the bill. I read through the summaries. Is the match rate typically included in the bill or does that come out in the CFRs after?
Well, not in the bill, so the way the bill is written is it's taking existing law and regulation and making changes to it. Delete this, add this, delete this, add this. So there's nothing in there about the match rate. So it would stay what it currently is.
Okay, so we
They're
would
not
keep our,
proposing to change anything other than the planning funds are 100% federal share. And the bridge formula funds for off-system bridges would be 100% federal share. So they only made those clarifications and changing the match, but everything else, the match amounts will remain untouched.
so we keep our 9%.
Yes.
Okay. And, well, last couple questions. No changes to the MTP length requirements?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. I guess the final question. I see a lot of really good things in here. In your opinion, do we take what we get, or do we say, thank you, congressional delegation, here's some other things to consider leaning on?
That would be my preference. I mean, as I stated, I don't think my letter is as strong as I would normally write something. It's not as impactful as I would normally write something, and there's definitely things that we had asked for last fall directly to the USDOT that didn't make it into this bill. And so I think it would definitely be appropriate to acknowledge, thank you for adding these things, but we, just as a reminder, we also want these other things. I think that would be a good approach if you want to amend the letter to direct staff to add those things after your vote.
Okay, I understand.
Other questions from committee members? Yes, Bob?
If this goes through, did you say there'd be more money available for construction? Because some of the funding for construction now we use to fund the office,
Yes, yes.
right? And then the local governments pay a match, would that be reduced, did you say?
The only category where the local governments get a match benefit is that if you identify an off-system bridge to use some of these bridge formula funds, you wouldn't have to pay any match on that bridge replacement.
Okay, that's what it.
Yep.
Doesn't affect what we pay now, it's
No,
contribution.
if it's surface transportation program dollars, which is our bulk, yes, we call it STP, still gotta pay the 9% match. But that's still a better rate than
Yeah, no,
48 other states that have a 20%.
a lot of information.
Yep. Another thing I guess I'll add too is that once this letter kind of gets buttoned up, I do want to pass this along to the Chamber of Commerce to see if they'll support the bill as well. But I need to get my ducks in a row as to what we're actually writing on paper here to the congressional delegation. Yeah, Jenny.
if you could clarify, I'm trying to come up to speed on these acronyms.
Welcome to fast planning.
I know, right? So how does this help rural Alaska? I mean, I'm thinking of the letter and also, you know, the majority of our state. Because the MPOs are, I mean, other than potentially the bridge replacement stuff. And then you mentioned the RTPO. So does this help rural Alaska in terms of how we could address things in the letter?
Tremendously.
Okay.
So let me explain. So first of all, with the Highway Safety Improvement Program and the Bridge Formula programs, there's this 25% sub-allocation. So it is sub-allocated to population categories. So there will be by formula, by percent, some of that money will go to communities under 5,000. Some of that money will go to communities that are 5,000 to 50,000. Some of that money will go to communities 50,000 to 200, and some of that money will go to communities over 200,000. So there will be a slice of the pie for those rural communities that cannot be spent anywhere else other than those rural communities. So, and then the other aspect of this is for the Highway Safety Improvement Program in particular, the other 75% that wasn't sub-allocated, the state cannot transfer that money to other fund categories without running a competitive grant program to which all of these communities could apply for those funds. So, there's that. And then regional transportation planning organizations, Brett might know this, but I don't know how many there are in the state of Alaska currently, but four
right now, yeah.
Four right
There-
now.
There are POs, they're not RTPOs yet, because it's a pilot program.
Yep.
So regional planning organizations, and just 2 weeks ago, I think Southeast Conference became or
Yes.
or
So you've got Southeast, you've got Copper River Valley, you've got fast planning, and then is it Northwest Arctic Borough?
Yep.
Okay,
they have now been active.
right. So, well, we haven't been active either because we haven't had any money to look at the entire borough. Right now, we're just looking at Fairbanks, North Pole, but if we had this 300,000, we could look at the whole borough. So, but these other organizations, that would give them $300,000 to put together their long-range transportation plan and identify the projects that they want to advance and apply for funds through DOT to get those moving forward. So on the planning side and the project side, it helps out rural communities to better access this money.
But then are there still many rural communities that are unrepresented?
Yes,
Okay. Do they
Probably the vast
automatically get a
majority of the
slice of
state.
the pie or how does that work? What's that?
Most of the state is not in
Yeah.
RPOs.
Right.
I would say that when you get into those population allocations, it does get complicated to try to partition funds to projects. That's something that we're going to do with it just becomes a real complicated exercise. It's good to have targets where to go to, but then becomes, if they're not all used up or used disproportionately, it's hard to manage it. So just maneuvering that takes place.
Thank you.
all right, other questions? Okay, here now at this time, we'll open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item here today? Megan, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that the Basics Act, it sounds really beneficial to our community and to local transportation planning in general. You mentioned wanting to strengthen the letter, and my biggest recommendation is that the opening should be like, we are in support of the Basics Act, and we're asking you to also be in support. Because in theory, the congressional delegation should know what fast planning is. And so I think we start off on a weird foot in the letter of like, hey, you know us, but here's who we are. But if you said something like, we're writing to express our support for the Basics Act and to encourage each of you to support and strengthen the bill as it moves through Congress. We appreciate that this act addresses many of our past comments about federal transportation programs and hope you will consider improving the bill with additional items detailed in this letter. That sets the stage for everything that you've been discussing so far in this meeting. So those are my thoughts.
Sounds like you have that written out.
Yeah.
Megan, would you mind emailing that to me?
I can absolutely email it to you.
Thank you. That could be a motion or an amendment if we get a motion on the table to add that language. I appreciate those comments. Hey, any other public comment today? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment period and I'll now entertain a motion on the letter regarding advancing it to the policy board. So we'll get a main motion on the table and then you're free to make amendments to the letter. Yes, Bob?
Move that we, forward this letter, to the policy board, their consideration approval.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Is there a second? Jenny? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Open discussion and I'll entertain any amendments that you all have.
We know enough about that, which actually was talking about more teeth to this letter. Wanted to get it out for discussion.
Go ahead, Jenny.
I have just a couple ideas. And I think Ellen, you and I are kind of mind melding here. One thing I think it's important to do is to make sure that the delegation during the conversations, when it does hit the Senate floor, protect the things that we think are the most important, which is the 9% match. Just because it hasn't been named, I think we need to flag for them, you know, hey, be aware of these things. And so I guess I would make sure that we put that in, you know, of special concern or of special interest is that we protect this match. And then the other question I had was in your letter to Duffy, you mentioned this year-to-year carry forward. We need by us and probably by every other NPO across the country. And I don't see that ever mentioned again. So that might be another thing that senators in DC probably don't realize how important that is. You know, we're talking tens and 20,000 here and there when they're looking at billion-dollar budgets and they don't realize how important, you know, $100,000 could be to us. So those are my two things, which I think we need to ask them to look forward to or look for. And then the other thing probably goes along a little bit with what Megan was just saying. Buried down here is what we think is the most important aspect of the Basic Act is this transparency. I think that should be up in the beginning. Because this is going to be read by some staff member who's looking for, you know, keywords. So those are my main things. I think it's great. And I'm curious to see what Megan has drafted up.
You have something, Kelly?
Sure. I compared this to the letter we sent last year. I forget exactly when last year. And it seems like 60 to 70% of what we asked for is in there in general.
Yeah.
So honestly, like, that's better than I would have hoped for when we sent that letter. Might as well ask for more, right?
Yep.
So I'll say what I intend on doing and then I'll make a motion. The four things I listed out that I think I would like to include, and I'm iffy on one of them. Still going to the 10-year requirement for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Still asking for the carry forward or banking of the funds. The one I'm kind of iffy on is the exemption criteria for non-attainment areas. And then, as you've heard me talk over the years, like really leaning into keeping that 9% local match. So I would like to make a motion to amend the letter to include, I'll mention one more time, the 10-year requirement for the MTP, number one. Number two, the carry forward, the banking of the funds. Number three, the exemption criteria for non-attainment areas. Number four, maintaining the 9% local match for Alaska.
Okay, these are on pages 27 and 28 of the meeting packet. So middle three bullets on page 27 and top bullet on page 28. All right. That was an amendment. Is there a second? Jenny has a second. Or Calendar, Jenny. Okay, did you want to speak to that any further?
Other than I may be iffy on the non-attainment area requirements, but it would significantly help this community with federal sanctions and the conformity freeze that we just got out of. So we'll see no harm in asking again with all the pains we saw as an organization during the last conformity freeze.
Yes, Bob.
Can you talk about this, the 10-year time change? What was that?
Yeah, so right now as a non-attained, so any MPO is required to update their metropolitan transportation plan every 5 years.
5 years.
Because we're a non-attainment area, we have to do it every 4 years. And I had the pains when I was on staff and I've had it planning. It seems like we finish one of these, like we're in right now, we finish it, and then like a couple months later, we start it again. So we can be ready for 4 years, and there's just so much. I don't want to say wasted effort, because I think it's a good process, but I think it could be not as frequent and we could get the same value out of it.
Extend to 10 years.
Yeah. And just do amendments as necessary, or like that, between those cycles.
And just like the cost of these travel demand model runs and redoing the model and probably like, we're just spending so much money
Sure.
every couple of years on it.
What about the non-attainment area? Do you want to? Do some more?
Yeah, we leaned into this a little bit in our ask. And I think Jackson could probably talk a little bit more about this in some of his conversations with EPA on this, but we're a non-attainment area in 2.5. I think we all know that. 99% of the other PM 2.5 non-attainment areas are due to vehicle emissions, mobile source emissions. We're wood smoke issues. And there are certain exemptions for things like wildfires, etc. So we were just asking to look a little more at possible emission or possible exemptions for our situation that really doesn't impact anyone else.
So you're trying to reduce the requirements for the.
Yeah, exactly. Like we're getting punished.
Wood smoke part of it, possibly.
In
Or something.
general, yeah, we're getting punished for, we're getting our transportation funds potentially withheld where it's not a transportation issue. I'd offer you a better explanation than that. You wrote the letter.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to attack this from a few different angles. But yeah, right now, there are exemption criteria for projects. I want that project list expanded. So, I mean, a safety project is exempt. Adding a roadway shoulder is exempt. The sidewalk, a bike path project, these things are exempt. Road resurfacing is exempt. I just feel like there's a lot of other project categories out there that could be added to that list. So that, you know, don't have any negative impact towards air quality or vehicles moving. But then also there's the separate issue of, I was trying to get in this threshold of tons per day or percent of emissions or something like that, that if vehicle emissions are not a primary contributor or significant contributor to your air quality problem, then we would be exempt from highway sanctions in the future. So if cars aren't causing the problem, then you can't withhold our federal highway funding. So, anyways, but
Because they don't regulate wood smoke, so something like that, or just.
well, the highway sanctions are tied to our air quality issue, period. It doesn't matter what the source is.
Okay, but what was the tie to the vehicles then?
I'm trying to get in a de minimis exemption so that if vehicles are less than, say, 5% or 10% of the contribution to the air quality problem,
Right.
that we get a de minimis exemption and we are, we would not be subject to highway sanctions if our area didn't meet attainment of air quality standards. Like you need to use a different hammer, and that you can't use that hammer on us if the vehicles are not causing the problem.
Right, yeah, that's.
Yep.
Sorry.
So I've worked this a lot of different angles, and I flew to DC and I talked to EPA staff about this, and so we don't have the silver bullet yet because nobody wants to open up the Clean Air Act and change the language from 50 years ago. So we're trying to get something in the bill where we can get an off ramp. for. So we have this fleshed out in our letter from last fall and previous letters we've sent directly to the EPA. And I can reference those in this bullet. But not go into all the detail that's already been provided, just provide copies of what we've asked for in the past.
Looks like most of the asks from last time. What Kellen said were picked up, just a couple more, so you can just pull what was sent to the Secretary Duffy. Just work them into this.
Yeah, basically the amendment that's on the table here, if I was to add those four things in, I would have another paragraph and it would have those four bullets. And saying, yeah, we support what's in the bill here. This is what we asked for. We support this. But hey, we'd like you to strengthen the bill by adding in these other four things that we had asked for that we don't see yet. So that's functionally how I do it. All right, well, let's call the question on the amendment and then we'll see if there's any other amendments. So the amendment is to add back in 4 bullets for things that were not included in the bill that we had asked for previously. We'd like those added. So that would be to carry forward federal funds year to year. Alaska's special match rate, 9%. Extending the required cycle for the MTP from every 4 to 5 years to every 10 years. And updating and expanding the exemption criteria for air quality monitoring areas. There's a hand. Oh,
It's like a Zoom bottle.
I see. Well, it's not a committee member, so.
No.
Anyone opposed to that amendment? Okay, seeing none, we'll consider that amendment added to the main motion. Are there any other amendments? Olivia, the language from Megan, she did email to me and I did forward it to you. I don't know if you could pull it up on the screen or not. People can read it again. Top one there.
It's like the attachment didn't attach.
Well, it's not an attachment. It's the
Or
it's the
in
paragraph
email.
right there. Yep.
It's not really Outlook.
So the bottom there. So we are writing to express our support for the Basics Act and to encourage each of you to support and strengthen the bill as it moves through Congress. We appreciate that this act addresses many of our past comments about federal transportation programs and hope you will consider improving the bill with additional items detailed in this letter. So that was a suggestion from the public comment to add that to the opening, which I think would complement the amendment that we had just approved.
That sounds good.
Was that a motion, Tim? Or an amendment?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, that's all right. Tim made the amendment to add that language to the beginning of the letter. Is there a second? Tim and Tim. We're gonna do that.
Figured I'd join them both.
Tim Glidden for the motion, Tim Zenza for the second. Okay, any discussion on that?
I think it's important that we lead with the positive, that we appreciate that what they have done. I'd hate if we were really aggressively forgetting about all the work that they put in and saying, but give us this other stuff also. You know, I feel like we'd be happy just getting this, so I'd hate to make it sound like in the letter that we're not happy with what's happening. We just out in North Pole gave some grants out, and after the grant was given out, they came back and said, you didn't give us enough money, you're ruining our event. And I felt like we shouldn't have given them any money because they weren't satisfied that we were giving something. So I'd hate for our letter to sound something like that.
Yeah, understood.
Like we feel entitled to these.
All right, any other discussion on that amendment? Okay, anyone opposed to that amendment? Hearing none, we'll consider that approved. All right, we have a main motion as amended twice. Are there any further amendments? I did hear one other idea about the bottom paragraph on the page 24 about what we think is the most important aspect of the Basic Act, ensuring transparency and collaboration amongst all of our partners. There was a mention of maybe moving that up to the beginning paragraph as well. I mean, obviously staff can wordsmith it, but is there interest in that amendment?
I think tagging it on to the end of what Megan just said.
Okay.
Right, and I'm not, it's hard to actually see all the words, but with that. You know, some sort of a transition into this that, you know, especially important that we continue transparency.
All right, is that an amendment?
Like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll wordsmith it.
I think it's
Second
important
to that
to do
amendment?
the appreciation and to say, please.
Yeah,
continue.
Jacob's got it. Okay. We got Jenny and Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
All right, any discussion or thoughts on that?
I almost want to leave it at the bottom. Almost seems like a negative thing to me. But. Yeah. I agree with it. Putting it at the bottom is fine, but opening with it might be a little salt in the wound kind of thing.
All right, now I gotta hear other people's thoughts.
It'd be nice if we could actually like write it out and see how it sounds. But I think,
Yeah,
once again, maybe we can look at a draft. I don't know how you guys do it.
I'll take all these edits and there'll be a new version by then the next week. And then, technical committee members could feed further revisions through their policy board member. So like you and Kellen can look at the letter in the policy board packet and tell Mayor Ward or Assemblymember Kraft, like, hey, we'd like to adjust that a little bit.
Boards.
Sorry, Hopkins. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call roll on this one. Since we have some controversy. All right, I'm gonna go down the list here and we're gonna, let's see. We're gonna start with Jenny.
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Tim Glidden.
yes.
Good.
Oh, Cliff, yeah.
Sorry. I'm going down alphabetical.
Okay.
Yes. Alexa, I believe had to step away. So Brett,
This made motion or amendment?
this is the amendment
Oh, it's
to move the language at the bottom of page 24 up to the first paragraph.
Yes.
Okay, Al?
Yeah.
Jason Olds online?
Yes.
Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Corey Richardson online?
Yeah, I concur to move it up.
Lieutenant Mike Roberts?
Yes.
Now Tim Zinza.
Yes.
Kellen?
Yes.
RJ Stump?
Yes.
Jacob?
Yes.
John Weinberger?
Yes.
Michael Bradley?
Yes.
And Michelle Denton? Well, either way, it passes.
Yes, sorry, it wouldn't let me unmute.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
No worries, all right. So I think we got all the yeses. So we now have we're now back to the main motion as amended 3 times. Any further amendments? Okay, hearing none, I'll call a question on the main motion as amended. And I don't think I'm gonna do roll call because all 3 amendments were passed unanimously. So I'll just ask if there's anyone opposed to the main motion as amended. Hearing none opposed, we'll consider that motion as amended approved. We moved on to our last item on any food business, Metropolitan Transportation Plan, schedule update and base project list. It is on page 43 in the packet. So to give you all an update on our long-range transportation plan update, which is under contract, with R&M Consultants, working with Michael Baker and RSG. We do have some, delays that are going to prohibit the consultant team from completing the full update to our long-range transportation plan by the end of the year, as required by regulation. Some of the reasons why they are behind, first and foremost, the travel demand modeling contract was not entered into until much later in the process than what we had anticipated. But also the availability of employment data inputs into that model were delayed due to the various government shutdowns that have occurred. Also, underneath a separate contract for a travel demand model update, that committee that I'm on decided to change software for the travel demand model. So we're moving away from Transcad and moving over to what's called Vizoom, so a different software provider, which takes additional time rather than working with the current model. It's being migrated over with a new software package. And then another issue that came up is that our travel demand model, which is now over 10 years old, is very outdated and doesn't use some of the latest assumptions and advancements in this technology. So there's more work there. And also the elephant in the room is that we don't have an approved boundary yet by the governor, and our long-range transportation plan and our next transportation improvement program, short-range funding plan, has to use the new metropolitan planning area boundary. So our proposal is to do what's called as an interim long-range transportation plan update. So it's kind of a light update while we continue to sort out these issues moving into 2027 with the full update of our long-range transportation plan to occur next year. And the schedule for that is outlined on page 45 in the packet. This is from our consultant team. The one thing I'll note here is that we're not the only MPO in the state in this situation. All three MPOs are in this situation. Anchorage also does not yet have an approved metropolitan planning area boundary. They're also, they and Matsu also cannot meet the schedule of having a completed plan by the end of the year. So we have a meeting set up with the Federal Highways Alaska Division Office and some of their resource staff on Monday, all three of us, to go over our schedules and proposal to complete an interim long-range transportation plan update. And this is a method that has been used by other public planning organizations across the U.S. Anchorage has even done this in years past. So I don't necessarily have any concern with it. It's just kind of is what it is. But this interim long-range transportation plan will include the new boundary, even though it's not approved. And that's what's been asked of us. And the one project that is in that donut area between our old boundary and our new boundary is the Chena flood control bridges. So that has to be added to our long range plan and our short range funding plan. So with that, the other thing I wanted to update you all on is that Olivia, if you'll go to page 47. Included in your packet is a draft project list for this long-range transportation plan update, this interim MTP. What I did was I took every project that we had included in our current long-range plan, that's included in our road rail crossing reduction plan, that's included in our non-motorized plan, that's included in our green streets plan, that's included in our safe routes to school plans, what's included in highway safety improvement program. All of those projects is in this spreadsheet. So these are already previously vetted and approved projects. And so I have the title, I have the scope, I have the range as outlined in those plans, and I have the source of where those came from. So there are no new projects on this list beyond what has already been vetted by the technical committee and policy board during previous years planning efforts. This is just a base list. It doesn't include anything that's going to construction this summer, but has already been constructed. And I did leave out some of the very long-range category projects from our current long-range transportation plan that were included in there in case Fairbanks experienced some significant population growth. So like a series of interchanges along the Mitchell Expressway is one of those. Other ones are like new road connections between North Pole and Two Rivers. So there are some kind of big ideas out there that maybe at some point, 20+ years from now, these things might be built, but we can't foresee that there's actually a need for that at this time, or that there will be a need over the next 20 years. So tomorrow, we're going to have our third steering committee meeting on the needs analysis for this long-range transportation plan. And we're going to be focusing that meeting on looking at transportation needs that are beyond what's in this list here. So we're going to be explaining the methodology for that. We're going to be looking at bridge condition data for every bridge in our boundary to identify which ones are in poor condition, fair condition, that should be put in this plan that are not already in there. We're going to be looking at pavement condition data. We have some for DOT facilities, not for city streets. We have an ADA transition plan for the city of Fairbanks, which identifies high priority sidewalks to repair or upgrade. We're going to be looking at crash data to identify, okay, so where's our highest crash intersections, or where we have a lot of road parks, to identify those spots and list safety improvement projects, not predetermining what the treatment may be, but just safety improvement projects at certain nodes on our transportation network, et cetera. And then also in reviewing all the public input we received during the first round of public involvement, we'll be teasing out comments that seem to be repeated. So one is, there's a lot of people in the community that have problems with Pega Road, whether it's lack of lighting or the undercrossing with the bridge there, getting inundated with water, or down in South Pegger where it gets into the industrial area and that kind of funny intersection there. I think it's Van Horn and Pegger. So we'll be looking at all that input as well to, like, there may not be a reported crash problem there or et cetera, but there are other project requests from the public for that. And we're going to start identifying some of these new projects to add to this list. So again, this list is just a base list of what's already been vetted by the technical committee and policy board. There's nothing new in there other than the flood control bridge projects. And Steve Small Post 5 bridge, because that's not been on our plans previously, but it's a clear priority for DOT. So that is included in the base list. And I do indicate that it's not in any of our approved plans yet, but it will be considered to be included as part of this. Anyways, that's there for you all to peruse. I really haven't had a quality control check on this list by anybody. So if you see an error, let me know. But I did pull all the project lists from our currently approved plans and built this spreadsheet. And it is split out between projects, programs, and planning efforts. So it's 3 different sections there. Yeah, I guess I'll stop there. This is just an update on schedule and process and the fact that we have a base list out to everyone to take a look at. It's not an action item here today, this is just an update. So any questions or discussion on that? Yes, Al.
You mentioned the steering committee meeting tomorrow. I believe Brett Hall and or John Natardis were on that. They're both on vacation. Is it acceptable that Brett Nelson and myself attend?
We advertise all of our steering committee meetings open to the public, so anyone can participate that's interested. Yep. I believe it's 10 a.m. to noon tomorrow.
Yeah. 10 or 10:30. Yeah.
I think 10:30, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just gonna verify real quick.
Yeah. So it's
10:30 to noon, so an hour and a half meeting tomorrow here in our office.
I'm not gonna make it.
Okay, yeah, no worries. Okay, there's no other questions. We'll move on to our informational items, obligations and offsets. This actually hasn't, the obligation report hasn't been updated since you all saw this at your last technical committee meeting. There's actually only been one new obligation in the last month, and that was for the design phase of the fast improvement program. But we are still again behind on obligations. But there is one new offset on page 61. We did receive $500,000 back from the Yankovich Miller Hill Road Reconstruction Project. This was because of the reduction to the bid award amount. So this is money we can technically use for other project increases, but my plan is to save it because it will still be under construction this summer, and I'm expecting at least $500,000 in change orders over the course of the project. So it's there, that will help us. But I don't really want to spend that down right away on any new project increases. I kind of want to save that for change orders on Yankovich. The project that I would program to begin with. Any questions on obligations and offsets? Al?
I believe it was CMAQ funding. I was talking to a project manager on the farmers route. ADA work, and that might not be able to be obligated this year.
Okay.
Or how.
I just expect that this spring or summer, we'll do another administrative modification to our tip. And so once that's official, I'll need to know so that we can make that modification. So I don't have a month yet where I'm targeting that. But once I get 10 to 12 new changes in, then I'll pull when we go. Okay, we are on to committee member comments. Are there any committee member comments today? Yes, Tim.
No, I just want to say, I know there's a lot of work. I don't know who does it, but thanks. I just want to recognize it.
It's a team effort.
Team effort.
Yep.
Thanks.
Any other committee member comments? Yes.
Yeah, one comment that I'm working off memory here, which is dangerous. I thought it came up with the policy board last fall that it was the March timeframe that our boundary may be submitted to the governor. We're in March. I'm maybe hoping at the next meeting we get an update on the boundary status.
Yes, I have actually had 2 policy board members as of last night request that be on the policy board for March 18th.
March 18th, okay.
This March, yes. The last update we had, a few months ago at the policy board level is that it was supposed to advance to the governor's office for approval or denial. And we have not heard any update for a few months. So a couple policy board members want to hear an update on March 18th from the state.
Maybe either you or a DOT rep could just repeat that update in our.
Yep. Yeah, well, they will.
Good.
Any other committee member comments? You're not early. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah.
All right, Tim Zinzak. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Al, all right. We are, any opposed? Hearing none opposed, we're adjourned at 1:36.
I have not about that, I'm gonna say.